It's Talk the Vote Live 2012 election night. Well, it's now over. We do have 4 more years of President Barack Obama. I'm Rob Hunter alongside Chuck Powell. Chuck, initial thoughts with the 4 more years?
I think it's a mixed bag for me. Of course, I am an independent, so I sort of see it on both sides. But I think my initial reaction to this was going in, this was not necessarily a pro-Romney type of support. This was going to be an either pro-Obama or anti-Obama kind of election. And I think that we're going to look back at this race and say Bill Clinton's speech at the Democratic National Convention, in which he said, and he depicted Barack Obama's 4 years as not a disaster. As a matter of fact, the fact that we held our heads above water after that economic crisis was actually a feather in Barack Obama's cap. And it might have swayed just enough of those undecideds, those independents toward Barack Obama.
And you have the power of the incumbency here. It's very hard to knock off an incumbent president. And Mitt Romney had a very small window with just a couple of states that he could have won in order to win the White House. You know, the scary part, I think, is for the Republicans is that if he's their best hope, and he couldn't beat an unpopular president who has a fairly low approval rating with a high unemployment rate. I think no president outside of President Obama now has been elected with a 7.2% unemployment rate. It's 7.9% right now. The GOP, the map for them seems to be in trouble. I think they need to get off the anti-immigration platform and kind of move to a more moderate position in order to help them win.
Well, I think the party needs to be thinking about that going forward. Are they going to have a crisis of identity at this point? And is it time to start dropping some of those old school beliefs? There are only 9% of Americans who are evangelical right now, who are extreme right Christians. And yet, we continue to be reminded of these Republican candidates who want to stick to these old school, abortion rules and rape laws and keep making these foot in the mouth comments for the party. It's not, they need to start snuffing this out. And I would argue, I think you're right, the same thing with illegal immigration. Ronald Reagan once said that the Hispanics are Republicans, they just don't even know it yet. And the point is that they are people that believe in family, as a general rule, and they are people that believe in, in the more right agenda.
Go to church more. They, are on that same page with them for sure.
And yet this illegal immigration issue, I think, is biting this party in the behind right now.
Let me go back to what you said about abortion. That issue cost the Republicans 2 Senate seats in Indiana, a Republican state, and Missouri, who Claire McCaskill, the incumbent, is a horrible candidate, but she won because of
easily.
Easily, exactly. So you might be right about that. It's interesting. But here's what else hasn't changed. The makeup of the government. So you have those 2 pickups for the Democrats. That one was a pickup, one wasn't. But the Senate stays in Democrat hands. The House stays in Republican hands, and you have a Democratic president. So what I expect of the next 4 years is a whole lot of the same. It's going to be a challenge to get anything done. That probably helps the Democrats, too.
Well, my hope is that, yes, that it has been more progress than we've given it credit for. That Barack Obama's mistake in his first 4 years was acting as if what he inherited, wasn't so bad. He needed to tell us it was awful from the outset. So I'm hoping that we are progressing. And that's what you got to cling to now for the next 4 years. So the fear, though, that I have is that there's a couple of things. Number one, I don't think he has taken this deficit seriously at any point. Even during the course of his campaign, whenever it was brought up, his reaction, Rob, was, well, if we're suddenly serious about this, a $16 trillion deficit. Now, I know we haven't been serious about our deficit in the past, but now it's at $16 trillion, and Obamacare is going to be folded in the next 4 years, and that's going to add to the deficit. So that's what I'm worried about. And then more than that, just from a societal standpoint, Rob, I am really worried about the reaction from a party that is already angry. 50% of this country is furious with this president, and they just lost the election, something that they didn't think that there was any chance that they were going to lose about 18 months ago. And so I'm hoping that we, we stay civil from this point forward, but there is a large percentage of this country that is furious right now.
And there have been other points in history where we've been pretty divided, where the popular vote, who didn't win the Electoral College, and we managed to get through that. I think we can here, because I think what might happen is we'll get sick of the bickering. It may take another decade, but it may take another 4 years. I don't know what's going to happen. But I think at some point, generally we're just going to say, you know what, this isn't working for us. This isn't solving any problems.
Yeah.
Let's try to get together and do what we can for America.
It sounds utopian.
It does.
I'm not sure we're going to get there in 10 years. And I'm worried it's going to get worse before it gets better. And this election, I think, is going to feed that beast.
Could very well.
Yeah. So, I don't know how to feel. I mean, it is election night, and you want to be excited about thinking forward to the next 4 years, but you're also worried about how half the country is going to react.
Here's my hope for President Obama. He knows he's got 4 years. He knows he's not running again for re-election. Now's the time for him, if he wants to be a leader and wants to be remembered, to tackle some of the bigger issues, like you said, the debt, the deficit, Social Security, Medicare. What are we doing with those? Let's at least start a conversation before it gets too late.
Well, what's going to be interesting is everybody has labeled him as this far left president, and he hasn't been.
No, he might have those beliefs, but he doesn't govern that way.
Well, now he doesn't have to worry about re-election. Yeah. What happens in the next 4 years? Does he go after gun control? Does he push the same-sex marriage agenda a little bit harder? Does he, really start flexing his liberal muscles, if you will, in the next 4 years, not being worried about re-election? Point is, if you thought he was left before, wait till you get a load of him now.
Now, the GOP House may stop him from getting that agenda, but we have 4 more years to figure that out.
True.
It's going to be fun. We'll be here a whole long the way, probably talking the vote in 2016 as well. For Chuck Powell, I'm Rob Hunter, talking the vote 2012, 4 more years for President Barack Obama.